So there's this book that I read about 5 years ago or something like that, and it's always been stuck in my head because of how just so bad it is. It's just so fucking bad that I just can't stand it. This book's called Amy and Matthew by Cammy McGovern. There's also a version that's called Say What You Will, and I will say what I will, but why have they got two names for this? I mean, Amy and Matthew... Well, it's called Amy and Matthew A Love Story, but that's just extremely shit, to be honest. Now, this is young adult, and if you know anything about young adult, you know that it's just complete fucking garbage. It's just absolute trash. Not in like every single instance, but in like most instances of like books you've never heard of that are labeled young adult. It's just the worst thing you could ever read. It's just all this nonsense, and I could go over it, but like there's just something in this book that just burned into my mind for like years because it's just so bad that it's unbelievable that someone wrote this. So I read this book a long time ago when I read a lot of like fantasy young adult, because I read a lot of John Green. I probably wouldn't like him now. It was just kind of like an easy read. I like romance, but you know, I read a lot of these young adult books and it always left me like unsatisfied, and this one obviously left me a bit more than that. But obviously I won't remember everything that happened. I don't remember most things that happened. I just looked up some reviews to check my information, see if it was some sort of fever dream. Was I getting it wrong somehow? And no, I wasn't. So the gimmick of this book, I don't know if it's like directly inspired from Fault in Our Stars, but like both of the main characters they both have disabilities. Amy has cerebral palsy, and Matthew has OCD. At the time when I was reading this book, I had read a lot of books about cerebral palsy, like a few books about it. I was just kind of interested in it at the time. That's probably a reason why I found this book. I was probably looking up, fiction stories about cerebral palsy. There's one called Out of My Mind, which is about more of a younger girl who has cerebral palsy and her dealing with it. I'd recommend it, but it's been a very long time since I read it. So this book is obviously about the romance between the two of them and how they deal with it, with their disabilities. Kind of like Fault in Their Stars, which I didn't like anyway that much. I much preferred Looking for Alaska. So there's this character, and he's called like Sanjay. I don't remember anything about him other than the fact that he was just like kind of a dickhead. He was a pretty like one-note like dude bro friend, I think. There's no nuance to him at all. He's just some nobody. So Amy and Matthew have like their struggles and their back and forth and like, just young adult garbage basically. But then Amy has this like unbelievable idea, just thing that like no one worth anything would ever do. She wants Matthew to like commit to her and like admit that he loves her and all that kind of shit. And in the meantime, and I don't know whether this was like before or after they get together, she decides that maybe she should practice having sex with Sanjay before she has sex with Matthew. Are you getting what I just said? She is in love with Matthew, and she purposefully, quote unquote, practices having sex with another guy to be prepared for when she has sex with him. Like that is literally fan fiction. Like no one would ever do that, ever, unless they were completely like messed up in the head. And like, it's just so, why would you do this? Like, why would you have this book and then just, why would you write this? Why would you write this? Like, is this a porno? Is this a hentai? What is this? What? This isn't even the worst part, okay? This isn't even the worst part about it. Like, this is pretty bad. Like, let's say, hypothetical story, this happens, you can recover. You can come back. It can just be a blemish on your relationship forever. But, you can come back from it. It can happen. But you'll never guess what happens. After giving her first time to Sanjay, this absolute dickhead, after this one night, she gets pregnant. And of course she decides to keep the baby. That's just fantastic for Matthew. But guess what? Matthew, little bit upset, little bit pissed about this, doesn't really like what happened there. Might even say it like ruined everything, you might say. And on top of all that, of course, Sanjay doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care at all. He's off to like some university or college or whatever, and surprise, surprise, Amy's stuck with the baby. Why would you have sex with another guy, give him your first time, when there's this other guy that you're actually in love with, and then, when you get pregnant, why would you keep the baby, especially because you decided to sleep with like the worst possible guy you could ever sleep with, who doesn't care about you, and just fucks off to do whatever he wants. He doesn't fucking care. He doesn't want anything to do with the baby because he's a fucking dickhead who doesn't want to take responsibility for his actions. And why would he, when he slept with a girl with cerebral palsy that he obviously wasn't going to deal with? He obviously wasn't going to be in a relationship with her. He knew that she was in love with someone else was in love with her. He didn't care about her, he just wanted to have sex, and then he did, and then he left. And that was obviously going to happen. And Matthew was obviously going to be extremely pissed when he found that out. Like, why would he do that? Why would she do that? And why would she keep his baby if you just aborted it or put it up for adoption? Maybe you could have fixed things with Matthew. But like, what am I supposed to think when I'm reading this shit? Like, am I supposed to be rooting for Amy? Am I supposed to be happy? Am I supposed to be sad? What am I supposed to get out of this? Is this some like real life thing that the author saw and thought, oh yeah, people will love this when I put this in? It's just haunted me for years because of just how fucking bad it is. It's just the worst thing ever. And I'm sure there's a bunch of like shit in the book that's just like either went over my head when I read it the first time, or like something that would have made me stop reading the book before I got to that point. But by that point I was like where is this going? Like I read the entire book. From what I remember, it ends kind of like ambiguously, like Matthew like visits her or something, and there's like some kind of like, oh, maybe things will work out. Like, no. How can the author like even entertain the idea that these guys could even be on good terms after this? Like, because of the disabilities? Like, what are you talking about? This isn't like an exception, by the way. Like, if you ever see like a book Rant, like it's usually a young adult book, and there's like some love triangle or cheating or pregnancy or just some absolute nonsense in the book, because that's what it is. It's just drama. It's just like young adult as a genre. It's just so bad. It's just the worst thing ever. And it's almost always the only thing most booktubers even cover other than like classic books, unless they're like, you know, male, because then they just do non-fiction. But like women and, you know, some gay men just cover young adult. They just read young adult, and it's either like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed it, or it's like, no, it was actually like pretty problematic and bad and I hated it. This entire genre just sucks. It's just it's all stuff like this, but like not as obviously bad, just all the time. That's just all the genre is. Stop reading young adult. It's terrible. Why is it when I want to watch like a booktuber, like someone who reviews books, it's all classic books everybody's read, young adult, and non-fiction? Like, if I want to find anything for anything else, I just gotta look like, oh, name of book, review. Like, where is the good shit? But I guess like the most popular channels are the ones that cover this stuff, because if someone's like subscribed to a booktuber, they don't want to get spoiled on a good book. But if it's a bad book, well, it doesn't matter. So people who like have stuff to say negatively are obviously gonna like do better overall. But that doesn't really feel like the reason they read young adult. I think they just read young adult because that's what they like. And then young adult books come out with shit like this, and it's just, I'm just glad I can get it off my chest, because it's always in the back of my mind whenever I look up to my book cabinet and look at my books, and I remember the Amy and Matthew book with this just the most ridiculous plot point I have ever had the displeasure of like fully reading. Like, usually when you hear stupid shit, it's like somebody else has read it, somebody else has watched it, maybe you saw a clip of it. But me, I actually read the full book, start to finish. And obviously I didn't like reread it for this video, like I'm not going to do that. But every now and again it just comes back to my mind, and I'm just baffled every single time I think of it. So in conclusion, if you ever see this book on Amazon or at some sort of shop, don't fucking pick it up. It's dog shit.